right, folks. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone joining in today from various parts of the world. Thanks for taking the time to jump on our webinar today. This is JW Simmons, go-to-market manager with Entytle. Going to have DJ as our host today. We're expecting this event runtime to be anywhere from about 20 to 30 minutes, and we'll take questions at the end. So moving along to the rules of the road. Please use the Q&A area for questions to the speakers. You will find the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, along with some other buttons on your Zoom bar. There's also a chat button that you can use to raise any technical issues during the course of the event. And the recording for the event and the deck will be sent out post-event. So with that, we'll go ahead and introduce our speaker for the day. DJ is our head of marketing here at Entytle. He's been in the B2B marketing space for close to a decade. Prior to that, he was a product manager and is passionate about all things marketing. He's often advised our customers on their marketing tech stack and strategies as well. When he's not at work, you can most likely find him in a gym setting. So DJ, with that, I will turn over to you.
All right, thank you so much, JW. It's nice to be on the other side. Usually, I'm the one who's introducing folks, so it's nice to be talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart. Hey everyone, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We'll try and keep it short and concise. Probably wrap it up in the next 20 minutes. Let's get started. I see a bunch of customers, and I also see a couple of new faces, new names to us. So that's exciting. Before we get into this, I want to touch upon why did we decide to address this topic? Why this sudden interest? And we had not heard of this term, intent or buyer intent, in the industrial space in the last couple of years. It's probably from April or May this year that we started industrials talk about this particular topic a lot, which is buyer intent, and that got us interested. And we've been observing this trend. A lot of industrials are trying to explore tools, various online databases that are available to try and gather intent. We started talking to our customers, as we always do. We've done a bunch of roundtable conferences in Europe, in the States, and this is what we learned. There are macroeconomic factors we are all aware of, which is creating a CapEx slowdown in general. Not a lot of customers are buying machinery at the moment. So industrials and industrial sales teams, what they're trying to do is try and find out who's actually buying. And for that, what they need is intent data, because the typical pick up the phone and look at your territory and try and find out who might be buying, that doesn't seem to be working. So they're trying to find out if there's anything in the intent data that can allow them to get a little more insight into who's actually buying at the moment. So that's where we saw that a lot of the traction for this buyer intent comes from in the last 6 months. We'll address what is intent in general, but one of the biggest reasons why we wanted to do this event was to delineate or to separate a new equipment intent or buying intent from an aftermarket intent. These are two very different things, and that's why we wanted to head on, explore this topic and address that topic as soon as possible before industrials go onto this path. We'll also talk about what are the various ingredients you'll need to create an intent solution, and what are the possibilities that you can achieve, what are the various workflows you can achieve if you were to go ahead and establish an aftermarket intent platform or an aftermarket intent solution. So that's the agenda for today. With that, let's get going. Let's address what is intent. I think we all equate intent with desire, a desire to buy. And that's a very simplistic method of looking at things. It's also accurate, but it's not a complete picture. When we talk about buyer intent, there's a lot of complexity involved. And as we get into some of these advanced tools and databases that are available, they'll provide a bunch of statistics, a bunch of algorithms, and they will also provide a bunch of variables that actually constitute a buyer intent or a buyer intent score. But at the heart of it all is a desire to buy, because there is a desire to fix something. There's a desire to grow revenue. There's a desire to fix a burning issue at hand. And that desire then leads to some kind of a behavior. That behavior is typically characterized by researching options that are out there. So industrial customers are now trying to solve for a problem. They're trying to research what machinery manufacturers provide machines in that particular geography. Who can they buy from? They're trying to do a comparison. Let's say a packaging machinery. They're going to compare vendor A versus vendor B. They're looking at product spec sheets. They're trying to find out what's out there, and they're trying to compare what's out there. And then that leads to action. So this is a third characteristic or the third attribute of intent, which is they'll actually act upon that information. They'll act upon their research. They will reach out to their peers. They'll reach out to people in the same industry, and they'll ask, what machinery do you use? And can I talk to your vendor? And what has been your experience so far? Or they'll go ahead and fill out a form. They'll contact the industrial machinery manufacturer. They'll contact the OEM. So there's these three major attributes together, which is the desire to do something, a behavior, which is a research behavior, and the action. All of these three together constitute an actual intent. Without the behavior and the action, a desire is nothing but a wish list, and that's not true intent. So in order to have intent, you need to have all these three. And I touched upon this in the previous slide, but there's something that precedes everything, and that is a trigger or an inciting event. And typically it starts with them trying to do more business, or they're trying to fix a problem that they have in their setup in their organization. So this together is a complete picture of an intent. Intent is the topic itself is never complete without talking about buying signals. These two things, intent and buying signals, go hand in hand. A buying signal is typically ranked by most databases as a 5-star ranking system. In a new sales setting, and that's true for us as well at Entytle, a buying signal could be a prospect consumes product content, or a lead is looking at product comparisons. They are downloading case studies. They are downloading product spec sheets. They're filling out a form. They're conducting price inquiries. Or it could be a more subtle, low intent data point, such as a company got a major round of funding done, or they've been merged with another bigger company, or they've been acquired by a bigger company, or they might have acquired another company. So there are many such different degrees of intent data points that we can look at, and that's in the new sales setting. The reason I lay this out for you today is so that we can make an actual apples to apple comparison between how this is different from an aftermarket intent. The typical tools are listed on the right. These are companies. We ourselves use ZoomInfo, but then there's Bombora, there's demand-based intent data. There's a bunch of companies. These are the top 5 that I could think of, but then there's a bunch of companies out there that provide this kind of data in a new sales setting, and they practically provide intent signals for everything under the sun. In our personal experience, this data is at best average, which is a 3 out of 5, because it's a hit and miss. One of the key factors that they rely heavily upon to derive this intent signal strength is if someone's actually researching for that product from a particular organization. So they're looking at keywords that they punch into a search engine such as Google to look for that information. And that can be a very weak intent signal. That's the reason why I go ahead and rate this particular kind of signal strength at just a 3 out of 5. Let's talk about the differences, but before that, let's talk about the similarities between, how is new equipment intent different from aftermarket buying intent. The similarities are that they answer those same 4 questions, which is why are they buying, what are they buying, how much of it they will buy, and when are they planning to buy, the time frame or the time horizon against which they're going to buy. So that's the similarity. So in a way, they answer the same 4 questions. But as you'll notice with the aftermarket buying signals, the kind of variables that are at play are extremely different. In the aftermarket setting, it's about what's the active customers percentage. How many are buying versus not buying? What are the past parts transactions that they've done? What's the percentage coverage for active contract or services out there? Even asset information plays a role, and operating hours for that equipment plays a role. Wallet share percentage, which is how much have they bought versus how much they should be buying, comes into picture. Sometimes industry segment type comes into picture. There might be assets reaching end of life. That is a major factor for intent. There is also the geography. In some cases, geography can play a role when a particular geography is going through some kind of a turmoil. So, and this is just a very small list that I'm laying out there. The list can be much bigger. So you'll notice clearly that there is a big difference between aftermarket buying signal versus new equipment buying signal. The biggest difference is aftermarket buying signal data is internal. It's already with you. It's scattered across tools. It's held in multiple systems, but that data resides with you. Whereas new equipment buying signal is purely external data. Yes, you can use aftermarket buying signal or your customer install base modeling, so to speak. You can use that model to create kind of a ideal customer persona or profile for a new buyer, but that's a bit of a stretch. You can extrapolate all of this data to a new buyer and intent signal in the new equipment sales, but that's a bit of a stretch. In most cases, there's a very clear distinction, which is aftermarket buying signal is an internal phenomena. It's internal data phenomena, whereas new equipment sales signal is essentially coming in from outside. And what you need is an install-based intelligence platform. You can't use any of the tools that I had listed previously, even though we ourselves use ZoomInfo. It's just not possible because those tools are not capturing this level of information that you're already sitting on top of. And because it's internal data, the signal strength in this case, in my opinion, is a 5 out of 5. This is the best signal strength that you can get from an aftermarket buying perspective. So if I had to sum it up, I would say new buyer intent can be observed and captured because it's external, but aftermarket intent data is actually much easier. It's much more helpful because it can be predicted. And that's the difference. One can be captured, the other one can actually be predicted. So most industrials at this point of time are going to ask me, we do this already. We talk to our customers. We know what they need, and we provide that to them. So it's fairly easy. What's different about this particular intent platform? And here's what's different. Almost all prospects that we speak to before they turn customers tend to focus on the bottom 20% of their customers or the top 20% of the customers. I've been on several of those discovery calls along with JW and our sales team, where we ask them this simple question, how do you decide who to go after? And very often the answer that we get is, I have my top 20 list and I have probably a bottom 20 list. And what ends up happening is the middle 60 is completely ignored. And because of that, there can never be 100% coverage. And that's not unique to one organization. That is literally across every organization that we've come across. Nobody does 100% IB coverage to get that intent data right. They usually focus on the top 20 or the bottom 20 because these are outliers. The top 20 bringing in a lot of revenue for little effort, and they're consistent buyers, whereas the bottom 20 are the ones that are at greatest risk of churn, so they get some special attention. But the middle 60 is what is ignored, and that's the reason why I feel like today none of the industrials that we've spoken to before they become our customers have attempted 100% install base coverage. It's just unfathomable. So what does this intent platform look like, install base intent platform look like? There are three key components to it, starting with the data quality engine right at the bottom. You basically need a purpose-built data quality engine that will take your data from ERP systems, the CRMs, the field service management systems, siloed databases. There might be various tools and databases that you acquired because of mergers and acquisitions. All of that data has to be brought together. It has to be unified. It has to be cleansed. It has to be deduplicated. And there's a bunch of other actions that need to be performed on that data before it becomes usable. Once that's done, the next level of the next component or the next module that needs to work on top of that data is analytics and AI. That's where you start running intent-specific signals. That's where you start looking at those variables and trying to create predictions and recommendations. And eventually, you need to provide that data to other external tools, to people that are going to use that data, to the sales team who's going to run with it, to the aftermarket team who's going to run with that data, to the marketing team who's going to make use of that data. And for that, it could be something as simple as a web interface, or it could be integrations with some of your existing CRMs, your BI tools, and other functional tools such as pricing and inventory, because all of that data has to be funneled into something that is usable. End of the day, that orchestration is important. End of the day, achieving that business goal is important. So these three components are absolutely necessary to go ahead and build that intent platform, which is a data quality engine, an analytics and AI layer, which is purpose-built algorithms for intent, for install-based intent, and then providing the right kind of access to external tools so that they can access this data and run with it. And this is where, it gets messy. We again see this day in and day out. This is the current situation for the vast majority of industries. The data is a mess. The data resides in silos and it's non-scalable. Sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. Sometimes within the same organizations, two different business units might be using two different CRM systems or two different aspects of the ERP, and that data does not talk to each other. And all of this is non-scalable. Many companies bring in analysts to solve for this problem, or they'll invest in manual workflows so that they can go ahead and solve for this problem. But nevertheless, there's just so much of data back and forth. There's just so much traffic, and there are so many bottlenecks that this is almost difficult to achieve with a more DIY kind of a strategy or do-it-yourself kind of a strategy. So at this point of time, I think it's safe to say that 100% aftermarket intent coverage is not easy without the right tool in place. That leads me to what are the next considerations? Where do you go from here? And I think the answer is rather fairly simple for industrial OEMs. It starts with, do you build it yourself? Do you build this particular tool all by yourself, or you go ahead and buy something that's purpose-built? Obviously, if you're considering purpose-built, then Entytle is the right partner. We've done this. We do this every single day. We have about 350 billion dollars of assets under management that are actively tracked within our solution. So we know this space. We know what we're talking about. But if you were to do it yourself, you will have to invest in people. You'll have to invest in data analysts. You'll have to carve out bandwidth from business folks who need to provide inputs to the data analyst, because the data analyst may not understand the data structure. They may not understand the nuances of the assets, the parts, the services, or just in general might not be from this industrial space. They might be a core data analyst who does not understand the industrial space at all. So you'll have to carve out some additional bandwidth where somebody on the business side is helping all these data analysts put all of this data together. You will have to be patient because this can take 6 months, a year. We've seen examples where an organization has been at it, investing time and energy for the last 2 years. I think there were about 50 or 55 people trying to solve for this problem. That's what we've heard. And they've spent a good couple of $1 million just trying to get all of this right. So it's a decision that the industry has to make, which is, do you build it yourself, or you'll go ahead and buy something that is purpose-built, that's available, and with which you can start seeing results in 8 to 12 weeks. But more important than that is what we call the aftermarket maturity model. Do you have the right people and process in place? Solution is great. The tools are great, but do you have the right people and process in place? If hypothetically you were to get this intent data today, if you were to know who in your installed base is buying what and what are they about to buy, procure, need in the next 6 months, 12 months, do you have the right people who can go ahead and start making those calls? Do you have the right process to address those kind of orders? Because again, in our experience, a lot of aftermarket teams are inbound order takers. That's how they are designed from scratch. And that's what they've been doing exceptionally well for many, many years. But there's not a lot of outbound process that seems to be happening in the aftermarket space, which is very different from new equipment sales, which is primarily outbound. So this is a bigger question to answer than the build it yourself versus buy something that's purpose-built conundrum, which is, do you have the right people and process in place to support those workflows once you get that data? And then the third important question, I think, installed base data and aftermarket data in general can be very overwhelming because there's just so much of it, which dates back years, decades sometimes. So where do you start? And we like to say this, you start eating an elephant one bite at a time, which means you start with the simplest use case, you start with the smallest data set, and then you see some success, you run with it, and then you start extrapolating that to other data sets, and you make this project bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's the three considerations that I want to leave you with, which is, do you want to build this yourself or buy something that's purpose-built? Do you have the right people and process in place who can support whatever data that gets churned out by this particular project? Do you have the right people who will take it forward and execute it? And then, where should you start? Which is with the smallest data set that you can work with and start seeing some promising results. So I think I'm almost towards the end of my presentation here, but the things that are highlighted in yellow are, what's technically possible with an intent platform. Install-based intent has exponential upside. There's a ton of things that you can do with an install-based intelligence platform like ours. But when we talk about intent specifically, these are the various use cases that can get enabled. Drifting customers, you can identify them because now you know that their intent score is really low, so they are about to drift. You can create targeted hunting lists. Marketing folks would love this. I'm a marketer. We love to run campaigns where we know exactly who's buying. I mean, that's a godsend in most cases. We can collaborate with channel partners. You can provide that intent data to channel partners, and they would be very thankful because now they're getting data inputs from you, which they've never seen before. They don't have to go and fish in the wild, but they know exactly where to go and cast that net. You can streamline your account planning and analysis. You can, of course, predict customer needs, which is great customer experience in today's day and time. You can target modifications. You can target warranty and service contracts that are about to expire. You can even upsell other things that the customer should buy, or prioritize who are most likely to buy. Sometimes you don't have enough people to go ahead and to chase every opportunity ad that's out there. So you would want to prioritize the customer which is most highly likely to buy, and also the dollar amount on that particular opportunity is the biggest. So there's a ton of things that you can do as a business or sales leader or as a marketing leader with this intent data. And I'm just leaving you with this particular slide because this is, I think, it paints a good picture of everything that's possible. I see a question. I'm not entirely sure. Okay. Jadhav, I'm going to go ahead and answer this question. It says, can you enrich first-party data with external data? Absolutely, you can, and you should. But here's the question for you, which is, in the aftermarket setting, the external data may or may not be of great use because you're already sitting on top of something that's a lot more accurate, and that is about to, that is bound to give you much greater result. So yes, you can integrate this data technically and hypothetically, and you should. But I don't see a lot of ROI on that activity because the install-based data in itself is very rich and it's good enough to get you results immediately. And this could be, you do raise a great point. This could be a great upgrade to your intent strategy over a period of time. But I would caution against starting with integrating these two kinds of data together right at the outset, because it may just delay the project in general, and it will delay the ROI that you're going to see from this project initially. So try and keep it as simple as possible. Start with a small data set and start with what you're very comfortable with, and then build on top of it. And one of the things that you could do with that is literally what you just said, which is enrich first-party data with external data. All right, so this is my last slide. I spoke about aftermarket maturity, and this is a survey, a benchmark that we developed based on our experience of almost a decade working with industrials, and we launched this sometime early this year. We've seen phenomenal results come through. So there's a QR code on the screen. Feel free to scan this QR code, or you can go to our website, www.entytle.com. And at the top, in one of the menus, you'll see this particular aftermarket survey pop up. There's that QR code over there. You can take this survey online, which is you can fill the form and you'll see the results, or you can go ahead and download an offline copy. It's a spreadsheet that you can download on your machine and then fill that data. That data does not flow anywhere; it resides only on a machine. You can also go ahead and share that spreadsheet with others in your organization or other business units within your organization. This is a great place to start when you're thinking about aftermarket intent and aftermarket intelligence in general, because it will highlight where you stand against the industry leaders, and it will also highlight if there are any gaps that you need to cover. And one of the gaps that I mentioned is, more often than not, the data strategy is in place, but what ends up happening is there's not enough people to take that data forward and lead it to fruition. So you also need to think of not just data, but also need to think of people, processes, and everything that goes with it. All right, I see another question come through. Do you have any results you can share from the survey so we can benchmark? Sure. We can go ahead and we can go ahead and send that data over to you. We have, I think, a bunch of submissions that we've seen, and it's the survey results basically puts you either in level 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we can go ahead and share those results with you. Feel free to drop us a note. I'll put my email ID. I'm showing my email ID on the next screen. So go ahead and write a note to DJ at Entytle or info at Entytle, and then we'll be more than happy to share that survey result. In fact, we're going to launch this survey on a much wider scale. Right now, it's someone discovering this survey like you did on this event, and then taking that survey themselves. We're going to go ahead and launch this on a much larger scale and send it to thousands of industrial OEMs across the globe, just to see what the state of the industry is. And at that point of time, we will go ahead and publish a much larger report of where the industry in general seems to be in terms of aftermarket maturity. All right, I think I'm at time, closing in at about 26 minutes, JW. So if there are any more questions, I'll take those now. If not, I think we're good to go.
Thanks, DJ. The content was fantastic. Really, hats off to you for this. Well done. Just one other question to round out, I think. And I think this is a good one. What communication challenges exist between sales, marketing, and the customer service teams in this kind of intent regard?
Right. It's an interesting point you bring up, JW, and probably I'll be remiss if I don't talk about the way we do things in Entytle. There's bound to be gaps in communication. I wouldn't say miscommunication, but there's going to be bound to be gaps in communication. One of the biggest is you figured out that a particular customer at a particular location needs 3 parts, but the service folks who are attending a service call who ended up there are not aware of this. They are performing maintenance, let's say on a particular equipment, and then the customer walks up and says, hey, do you know when I'm about to receive this particular part? And they have no clue of what's going on. So these kind of gaps in communication will always exist between marketing, sales, and service. And for that matter, marketing may be running a campaign and not realize that the sales team was already trying, the aftermarket team was already trying to do a proactive outreach for something else, maybe to upgrade their warranty or renew their service contract and so on and so forth. So there's these kind of situations that are very likely to happen between these 3 entities, the marketing, sales, and service teams. And one of the best ways to address this is the way we do it at Entytle, which is in a RevOps setting. JW, you and I are always on the same page, and our customer success teams, think of them as a service teams. They are always on the same page because we know exactly what's going on with every account, and we run this by each other before we go ahead and execute. So that kind of tight communication is needed, and it's best that aftermarket teams own it and they run with that communication to all of these various other departments, so that there's no stepping over each other's toe. I hope that answers that question.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
That's all for now, DJ. If you want to wrap it up, we're good to go. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to talk to listen to us today. And we look forward to hosting you again soon. Thanks, JW.
Thank you all.